All right, thanks, Cassie. Like Cassie mentioned, I'm Amanda Brown. I am an ecologist here with Polk County Conservation. I'm guessing everyone can hear me okay because I did answer Cassie's question. So I'm hoping everyone can, but Cassie, jump in if they can.
You're
You
good.
guys. Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to give a little talk today about Trails End Wildlife Area. Is kind of our official name that we've deemed it, but it is a mitigation bank site, as Cassie mentioned, the largest in the state. So I guess I'm going to start with, if it'll advance. There we go. So, what is wetland mitigation? So, wetland mitigation came out of the Clean Water Act in 1972. And essentially, what it is a way that we don't essentially lose wetlands or no net loss of wetlands, is what the law states. So, let's say a business, and I'm sure many of you know this, but like a business or someone wants to build on a site that has a wetland and they cannot avoid impacts to the wetland, then they have to mitigate for that. So, they have to buy credits in a bank or wetland mitigation bank within what's called the same service area. So there are different service areas throughout the state. They have it's kind of like a watershed map of service areas throughout the state that you have to go for. So, if someone's building a new building or looking at destroying a wetland within a certain area, they have to find a bank within that service area and buy credits there. Legally, they have to do this. So it's required, and it helps basically prevent some loss of wetlands on our landscape or loss of wetlands in general on our landscape. So another kind of interesting part about it is streams are also now going through this as well. And Trails End does have both stream and wetland mitigation. So streams work the same way. If someone's going to quote destroy a length of stream, maybe they're going to put a stream through a pipe. That's considered destroying a length of stream. Or maybe they're going to cut off some meanders in the stream, so they're losing some length of the stream. That is also now covered under this Clean Water Act, and it is required that they mitigate for that loss of stream in a mitigation bank within that service area as well. So I'm just going to go into this briefly because it is a process to establish a mitigation bank. It's not for the faint of heart, I guess I would say. So there are many steps when you want to go and establish a mitigation bank, and we went through all of these when we went and established the Trails End Mitigation Bank. So step number one, of course, is acquire the land. You got to find a piece of land that you want to do the mitigation bank on. Next step is develop a design or a plan for the site. So we hired engineering firms to do this for us. So first phase, and I'll talk a little bit more about the phases coming up. First phase, we hired JEO to look at doing a design and a plan for our site. And then the second phase, we used both engineering to do the design plan for phase two. So once you develop a plan, you kind of have an idea of what it looks like. You submit a prospectus to the IRT. So it's a basically an interagency review team. It's made up of a whole bunch of different organizations. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but they have to review this document and basically give you approval. So they review it. They make sure it meets all the requirements. They make sure you have all your ducks in a row essentially, and that everything looks good. Once they approve this document, and it can take a very long time. It can take up to a year, 6 months to review this first document. Then you have to start developing what's called the banking instrument. So the banking instrument, or BI for short, that's an even lengthier kind of document you have to create, and that spells out everything that has to do with your mitigation bank. So you go through the design, you talk about your maintenance plan, you talk about all the different nuances that go along with it. So, our banking instrument for phase two, so the stream portion of our project, is like 500 some pages. So it's a very lengthy document. You have to develop that, and then you submit it again to this IRT group. They review it. Again, it can take, upwards of a year. They go back and forth with different suggestions or different things they need changed in order to meet their requirements. Um, and then basically once that's approved officially by this group, you're good to go. So, but you cannot start any work until that document is approved and actually no credits are released. You can't start making money on your bank until that document is approved. So, all said and done, I think we've been in this process, and we finally got all of our banking instruments approved for all the different phases. And I think we've been in this process for like 4 years, maybe now. So it's definitely lengthy, but worth it in terms of our experience because we're going to get a really nice restoration on this site. Just to go a little bit about the credits, I won't get a ton into them, but I said the credits are released kind of in stages, and you have to wait until after that banking instrument is approved. So you get about 15% credit release after that banking instrument is approved. The rest, so another 15% is released after construction, and then the years subsequent after construction, you get about 15% released until you sell out of credits. So it is definitely staged, so there is a lot of money that you have to pay up front in order to do these restorations on the mitigation bank. So, a little bit now about Trails End Mitigation Bank in general. So, we started, of course, with the acquisition. So, you can look, it's a pretty sizable acquisition. The Trails End piece and the Bain piece were our two initial acquisitions. Here, where I think you guys can see my cursor, but if you're familiar at all with our park system, we have a little park called Mally's Park that was near the town of Berwick. So this acquisition was strategic for us in that it expanded our size of Mally's Park. We also have the CVT trail that runs through here, and then the Gailey Wilson Trail also connects up here. So, when we initially acquired these areas, it was kind of an opportunity for us to acquire just floodplain of 4 Mile Creek and protect it. So that's how we looked at it first. So we were really just looking at protecting this floodplain. So 4 Mile Creek runs through the center. We have Michicanaut Creek that comes from the east, and then we have what we refer to as Kearney Creek, which drains from Ankeny, coming in from the west. So it's a really nice protection of this flood area, flood prone area, some crop ground that maybe wasn't as productive as some other areas. So really, again, our goal initially was just to acquire this for
Sure.
protection,
Might be that.
restoration, and things like that. So and then recently, so this is more of a recent acquisition, we acquired the Williamson property up there in the upper right-hand corner, so on the east side there. That has a portion of Michicanaut Creek, and then, of course, that floodplain as well of Michicanaut Creek. So that's another area that we just added. So if you look at this total area, it's about 280 acres. So very sizable location that really expands our park system and really gets it into protection for us. So, why did Polk County Conservation acquire this land? So, I kind of already talked about it, but there's a lot of other reasons as well. So, you can see from this map, these areas are up at the very kind of top of what we consider the lower 4 Mile Creek Greenway. So, this is a greenway system that Polk County Conservation manages and owns a decent amount of it. This map here you're looking at, everything in pink is owned by Polk County Conservation. And then the other colors, so you see yellow is City of Des Moines, purple is the City of Pleasant Hill. Then we have Strasser Woods in green, which actually we do manage, but the DNR owns. It's a preserve there. So really, this was strategic for us in order to protect our park downstream. So again, watch those floods, allowing this landscape to flood naturally, reducing those flows downstream. That not only benefits Polk County Conservation land, but it also, benefits Des Moines residents there. We saw an opportunity for some recreation amenities, some environmental education. So we already do some education things out of Mally's Park. So in order to kind of expand our footprint there, of course, the wildlife habitat benefits anytime you have these large areas of land, especially along creeks, which, serve as corridors for wildlife. Open space, very strategic. Flood control is important for us, of course, but then also important for it's a watershed management authority goal to control some of the flooding that happens along 4 Mile Creek and downstream for the residents. And then kind of finally was the wetland mitigation option. And, we didn't, like I said, initially think this was going to be a route we could go. We were approached by someone actually that said, "Hey, have you ever thought of this land as a mitigation bank?" And then we kind of dove in, and our initial reasoning for that was we knew it was going to be a very expensive restoration on site. And this was a way for us to essentially get the restoration we were already going to do paid for. So we weren't necessarily looking at it as we're going to make a ton of money here. It was a way for us to get the restoration done that we were already planning on the creeks and the wetlands. So a few highlights of the mitigation bank, and you'll see this was original plan that you see up here on the screen from JEO. So it does not include the Williamson parcel that I mentioned as a later acquisition. Um, To orient yourself, north is going to be kind of on the right side of the screen there. It's a little bit sideways, just to kind of see, and the Chautauqua Valley Trail there goes through the middle. So as I mentioned before, the site has both stream and wetland credits available. It's located within the lower Des Moines River bank area, so that's the service area you could call it. There's about 15,000, close to 16,000 feet of stream restoration that's going to occur. Again, those stream credits. That's part of phase two, so that has not began yet. There is 54 acres of emergent wetlands. Those are those basins that you're seeing, minus basin three there on the map. There's 12 acres of forested wetlands. So, as part of the mitigation, you have different wetland types. Those forested wetlands are not shown on the map here, but they're located along the stream, kind of in that stream corridor. We have 83 acres of native prairie that's part of the wetland mitigation bank. And I mentioned the flood benefits that we're seeing here because we're right on 4 Mile. We have about 330 acre feet of storage for flooding here, which really goes to some of those watershed management authority goals that we have. So the basins here are laid out. You can see there's 6 basins total in this that we consider this phase one. All of these basins have been complete, and I'll talk about them a little bit. But I like this map because it shows a very good overview of kind of where those basins are located. You'll also notice, I like to point out on this map too, that we have some easements that run through here. This is a big intersection for some sanitary sewer lines, some different things that are already in place. So we have some overhead power lines that have easements. And we actually those cannot be considered part of the mitigation bank. So we did our trail system there. So we will plan on having like a soft trail system, what we're calling it. So just mowed paths. And those will be on these easement areas. So we were able to maximize the amount of credits we could get on this site by putting the trails in those easement areas. You can also see that there's 3 parking lots. We again designed those. Those are out of the mitigation bank because we cannot get paid for, putting gravel down on those lots. So we were very strategic kind of about where we planned the recreational elements, because we really wanted to focus on, the mitigation bank, getting those areas restored as much as we could. So I already kind of mentioned this and alluded to it, but we plan on this being very much a multi-use area. So, having those soft surface trails I mentioned, having people be able to go and walk on these areas. I mean, it's a large number of acres, of course. So we want people to experience it. We have those stream enhancements that I said. We're going to have wetlands. One of the basins, so basin number, let me see if I can go back. So basin number three here, this is actually functioning as a fishing pond. So it was dug a lot deeper than the other basins. And that's not actually, we're not getting credits off that. It's not considered a wetland. But we wanted to have that amenity on site for people to utilize for fishing. We have a water trails access already located in Malleys Park. So this project will make that water trails access even more usable because we'll be doing some stream restoration around it and kind of make it a little nicer to be able to get down to. Again, we have those bike trails already in place that this provides a really good connection to it. And then we've also thrown around the idea of an observation tower and different things like that in order to add even more kind of recreation aspects, but making sure and keeping our footprint light because our really big focus here is the restoration and the wildlife aspect. So I mentioned we split it up into 2 phases. So phase one is all of those wetland basins that I mentioned. So 5 wetland basins. We have that one fishing pond that I said. We did some tree planting within those forested wetlands. So we enhanced those by adding trees. We did that native prairie establishment. So that is in about this summer will be year 3, I believe, of that establishment on the prairie. So it should look really good. We have those parking areas installed. So those 3 parking areas have been in. We have one trail that's already been mowed in or added, I guess you could say, and that goes around that fishing pond to really allow access there. That was a request from the public. We were going to wait and do all of our mowed trails once the stream restoration work was done. But we had a lot of requests of people wanting to utilize that fishing pond already. So we went ahead and add that mowed trail. And then we also added a restroom in that parking lot near the fishing pond. Again, another request. We wanted to have the access there for anglers and the restroom for them to be able to use. The photo you see here, this is a completed basin. This is our one basin that is out of the floodplain. So it sits on top of a hill. It is considered basin number one here on this map. So this is actually a ridge, and it sits up on top of that hill. So that's our one upland wetland that's actually out of the floodplain. It's really neat. Actually, funny enough, it holds the most water out of any of the wetlands. So it's something with the way the water flows up there, and the water table is a little higher up there on top of the hill. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing we found out as we're doing investigations on this site that that one actually holds the most water. So it's really neat. It looks really pretty, and a lot of ducks are using it when you go out there. So again, phase one is all complete. So I have a few before and after photos with the drone. I haven't been out to get complete after photos, so they don't line up completely, but a few of these photos are from Cassie too. She took her drone out. But this was a before on the stretch on the southern part of the Trails End Mitigation Bank. You can see in the background there, that's the new ARL horse facility. So there's 4 Mile Creek that's kind of here in the other side of the photo, and then the Gailey Wilson Trail is the trail you see. So that was before, it was just crop ground, corn production here in this photo. And then this is an after, so it's oriented from a different direction, but you can see again that Gailey Wilson Trail there. What you're seeing in the photo is this is the fishing pond, and then a wetland that eventually, if the fishing pond gets too high, it'll kind of overflow down into that wetland. This was this summer. The prairie around it looks a little rough in this photo, but it's still establishing. So it had just recently been mowed. So yeah, exciting that these are both done and complete, and we're excited to kind of see how they go here. The pond is not all the way full either in this photo, so you can still see some vegetation sticking through. Here's another before photo. You can again, if you want to orient yourself and see that ARL, the Animal Rescue League little horse area. And then this is the ridge I was talking about. I hope you guys can see my mouse, but this is the ridge where that one wetland that I had that photo of the sunset is on. And again, you can tell that's just in crop production here. Was the before, just traditional crop rotation of corn and soybeans. This is after. We're looking at it from a little different angle. So we're looking to the south here. The basin up on the hill is the one that is up on that ridge, and then it actually flows down. There's a flow through structure or a flow over structure, I guess you could say, that goes down in this larger wetland down here. This wetland, the larger one down here, actually was holding the most water we've seen it hold at the time of this photo. And it's since dried up a little bit, but as you can tell, we have two completed basins here. That'll be really nice. This one down here is in the floodplain, and then you can see we have the native prairie throughout the whole thing here getting established. This is a photo Cassie took, and I really like it because it shows the different elements of the site. So again, these are the two basins we saw in the first photo. So we have the fishing basin kind of on the top, and then we have that other wetland basin down here. You can see 4 Mile Creek here flowing right next to these wetlands. So we have that, and this will be restored as part of phase two. And then you can also see over here the town of Berwick. So it's really that kind of urban, interface here. We're in that divide, which is really, really nice to have this area protected. Because you can also see back here in the background, that's Ankeny. So again, we're going to see a lot of development around this site. So we can get protected ahead of time, and then also provide this really nice recreational amenity right next to a bunch of houses that are going to be coming in. So it serves a really great purpose for wildlife benefits, but then also the recreation benefits for the public. So like I said, phase one is completed. Here's another photo of one of the basins this summer. Has a decent amount of water in it. Again, we're seeing a ton of wildlife utilizing it, and a lot of exciting things this summer, kind of seeing it start to come to life. And then one final photo. This is basin 6, so it was that really long linear basin. This basin has a few like wet areas that sit outside the actual basin itself. While we didn't necessarily plan for that, it's kind of a nice addition because in a floodplain, you would see all these kind of these wetlands placed throughout the landscape because a floodplain is, especially if water gets out of the banks of the creek, is going to be wet the majority of the time when we have these wetter seasons. So again, a basin, you can see some ducks here utilizing it, exactly what we want. So now on to phase two. So, phase one is complete. We got all those wetland basins, all the areas planted to prairie. And so phase two is now just focused on the stream restoration. So we were restoring the 4 Mile Creek the whole way through. like I mentioned, Kearney Creek, that one that comes from the west from Ankeny, will be restoring, and then also Michiganot Creek. And we'll be restoring Michiganot Creek on the Trails End property, kind of right there by Mally's, but then also on the Williamson property that I showed you that we recently acquired. We actually switched over for this phase to a third party to manage it for us. So it was just, it was a lot of work on our plate to get through that first phase of like banking instrument, prospectus, all the different reviews going back and forth and stuff like that. So we were actually approached by a third party who does management of mitigation banks and kind of does the whole process. So it's almost like their bread and butter instead of us struggling through doing it. And so essentially, they are doing all of the mitigation bank management, going through even the construction phase and just basically taking over everything for us. And we're paying them to do that. And we worked out, money wise, it all worked out on our end to be able to do this. So it all kind of evens out in the end. It just takes a lot of stress off our plate to do it. So once the construction is done and we have a say in the construction, we're looking over documents, we're basically doing it hand in hand with them. But they're kind of taking the blunt of that work. And then it'll get turned back over to us for maintenance and management at the end of it. So we're looking at a large amount of stream credits for this phase two, over 170,000 stream credits we'll be looking at. I believe it's estimated that it'll be about 9 million or so in revenue when we look at all of it together when credits are all sold. So that would be when it's completely sold. And I think the potential, so I will mention too the potential costs of like what it costs us. So phase one, we looked at about an $8 million expense as part of that project. So that included construction and some of our design fees. And then phase two, we're looking at about, I think, 2 million, maybe 3 million in expenses to do phase two there. So yeah, exciting stuff happening with phase two. So timeline, here's an overview map. This is where I mentioned, you can see the basins already in purple that were already done as part of phase one. All the orangish colors and then the bluish colors, those are all part of phase two. And so you can see we're doing it kind of in what I call Trails End proper, right there in kind of the heart of the area. And then we're also doing it up there on Michiganot Creek on the Williamson property. So, update on where we're at with this. So, the banking instrument has been approved. The tree removal has already occurred in some sections. We did that kind of ahead of time, not really knowing when the work would be completed, but we wanted to get those removed within the bat window. We're looking at stream work to begin in late 2026. So there's still some logistics to be figured out. So it'll start sometime mid to end of next year. And then we're looking at the project being completed in early 2027. Again, that's ideal timelines. It could take a little longer than that, weather permitting and stuff like that. And then we're looking at doing addition of trails, kind of mowing those trails in and any other kind of recreational elements then in 2027 and 2028. So that's our initial plan and timeline, but the stream work will be beginning hot and heavy sometime mid to end of next year. And then we're not going to do this virtual tour. It didn't work last time, so I'm going to skip it. But there is a virtual tour. If you're interested, I can send you the link. It wouldn't work for me last time, so I'm not even going to attempt. But I believe that is all I have. I don't know. Hopefully I hit well, I'm right around 30 minutes. So, yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. I will say I was pleasantly surprised. I was showing a newer employee one of the parking areas of the Trails End, and I happened to see the bathroom and the mowed trail, so we went ahead and walked around it, and it was lovely.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that was before the snow.
Oh, yes, I know it might be a little difficult to walk now because we do not do snow removal on that one.
Yeah. All right, we do have some questions. Keep them coming. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. First one, was the 338 acre feet of storage created as part of the mitigation bank, or did that exist before the project?
That was created as part of the mitigation bank. So that's within our design elements of the stream and the wetlands. We'll be getting that 330 acre feet of storage. That was not there prior.
All right. Are you able to share the third party doing the management of phase two and a ballpark cost?
It's Sandy Creek Partners is the the group or the business, I guess you could say. I do not know for sure on the cost. That was Doug's kind of forte, but I can definitely get that answer and send it out. I just don't know that off the top of my head, sorry. But
Okay,
I can get that and I can send it to Cassie and she can get it to whoever asked that question.
sounds good. Um, have you sold any credits yet, and what are the prices? I'd also be curious to know who's buying these credits so far.
Yes, so that's a good question. I don't, again, know the credit costs right off the top of my head, but yes, we did sell all 15% of our initial credits, and now we're in kind of the round two, I guess you could say, of credit release since why can't I think of it? Finished the construction. And so we're on, I guess, set two of the credit release. I knew that you guys were going to ask the cost of the credits, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Doug before the presentation. So I'll get those costs as well. I do know for the stream credits, we're selling them, I believe, for $50 a credit. But I can't remember on the wetland credits. So I will look at those and then, in the upland prairie credits as well. So I can look at those and get those numbers out. But we have had a lot of luck selling them. Um, We've had just various kind of like private businesses buying them. We had a few public needing them. So I believe that Polk County Public Works
Yep.
had to buy a few from us, and maybe doing some stream credits in the future. One of our biggest customers, I guess you could say, could be the Iowa DOT. But right now, we actually can't sell to the DOT. There's like some law or something. I can't remember. It's some legislation that basically says they can't buy from other public banks because they're a public entity. With that being said, they were working on kind of writing something in that they would be able to buy from us. I just don't think that has occurred yet. But that's in the works to try to open it up to allow them because they have a lot of need. And so, if we could open it up to them to get credits from us, I think that would be ideal. But just right now, we cannot sell to them.
And isn't there some sort of rule that when a project is looking for credits, they have to purchase credits within like 100 miles of the site or something like that?
It's within the service area. So, like, it's kind of like a watershed map where you have like an area around your bank, I guess, and they have to buy within that service area that they're building in. So yes, there are some restrictions on where they can buy and who can buy. Luckily, our service area is a lot of the areas that are getting developed around the metro. So it works out for us where we're located.
All right. Do you foresee a bike trail that continues upstream along 4 Mile to Alleman?
Um, so I believe there are talks about that. There will be no other hard surface trails that go through Trails End. So it would definitely probably follow the Gailey Wilson Trail that already goes up into Ankeny. We have no talks on doing any kind of hard surface trails on Trails End. So it'll just be what's already existing there, the Chautauqua Valley Trail that kind of cuts through the middle, and then the Gailey Wilson Trail in the south. We'll have soft trails, but no hard trails, no paved trails that go through the actual park, I guess.
All right. What constitutes a credit? Is it by linear feet of impacted stream or some other way?
So it depends. So the credits, yes, it's linear feet of impacted stream for, I think there's some other elements that go into it. It's not like a one-to-one. So it's not like if you impact X number of feet, you have to buy the same exact X number of feet of stream credits. There's some other elements, and I don't know exactly what they are, but there's some other elements that go into it of like, what was the stream like? Was it a really high? I'm going to use the wrong words, but was it really high value stream? Like was it really good condition ecologically? Was it just kind of deemed a secondary order, first order stream, third order stream? So there's a lot of different nuances that go into determining that. So it's not just a straight feet foot per foot. The same with the wetland credits. So it's not necessarily, those are by acre, and it's not necessarily like you're disturbing X number of acre of wetlands. You have to buy the exact X number of credits. So there are other things that go in there based on like ecology and kind of what it looks like and what type of system you're destroying when you're doing that.
All right. I have a request if you're able to share the actual agreement with Sandy Creek that was approved.
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't. I'll talk to Doug. But it's for me, I imagine it's public knowledge. So yeah, I'm sure I could send that. I'll talk to Doug and see if I can find that, and then we can send that to whoever requests. Cassie, if you just want to write that down, who requested,
Yep.
that I can we can get it sent over.
Sounds good. All right. Any other questions for Amanda? All right. I'm not seeing any more, but this was super informative. So, really, thank you a lot, Amanda, for being our speaker this month. And we are very excited to see the progress on this. And I'll probably have you on again for another Lunch and Learn with an update.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Happy holidays, everyone.